All right, welcome everyone that's joining us. We'll wait just a minute or so and let folks join before we go ahead and get started. Again, if you're just joining us, we're going to wait just a moment or so to let folks join, but thank you everyone that is jumping on. We'll get started in just a moment. All right, we'll go ahead and get started, and if people join throughout, then they can just kind of jump in. But thank you everyone for joining us. On behalf of the University of California, Riverside, thank you for tuning in today for our virtual industry insights event focused on real estate. My name is Brock Cavett. I serve as the Director of Young Alumni Engagement at UC Riverside. I'm really excited to be able to be here today with our three panelists to hear more about their careers in real estate. Typically, our Industry Insight series are in-person events that allow folks to gain a better insight into various industries from accomplished UCR alumni. With the transition to virtual events, these events have moved online for now, giving us the ability to reach a larger audience, not only alumni, but students, staff, faculty, as well as folks from all over. Today, we'll be diving into the topic of real estate, an industry that is always booming in Southern California. We'll hear from three graduates who have experience in a variety of areas within real estate. This program is made possible by the UCR Alumni Association. I encourage you all to take advantage of all that the Alumni Association has to offer and keep an eye out next quarter as we slowly begin to return to in-person events. Throughout today's session, you'll have an opportunity to ask questions of our speakers by clicking the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. We'll try to answer as many of your questions as possible during the second half of today's event. For your reference, we will be recording this session today and we'll send it out after the event in a follow-up email for you all to have as reference after the fact. We'll begin today's event with each panelist introducing themselves and then move into a conversation where we'll address your most pressing questions. So at this point, we'll kind of shift now to our conversation with our panelists and get to learn a bit more about who we have joining with us today. So again, I'm pleased to be joined by our three panelists. And so I'm going to start off with a few questions after they introduce themselves, like I said. So I'd like to now open it up for our three panelists to introduce themselves. And we can go ahead and start. We'll go in alphabetical order, Andrew. So we'll start with Andrew.
All right. Thank you so much for the introduction. I'm excited to be here and excited to meet our other panelists. My name is Andrew Villalobos. I now work in residential real estate for Coldwell Banker Realty here in Riverside. The building I'm in now was built in 1960. It's been a real estate office since it was built in the 60s. So it's kind of a cool place. But I went to UCR from 2004 to 2008 to play for the men's soccer team, and then I spent a couple of years right after college playing soccer in Germany for the most part, and then came back. And my degree was philosophy. I was planning on going to law school, and just had a change of heart. Kind of fell into real estate. Didn't really ever think or have any idea whatsoever of being in this field, but it's worked out really well. It's a great career. I've been enjoying it. And my focus over the last 8 years has been historic real estate. So mostly, early 1900s, but anything up to about 1940. And this path has led me to get really involved in the city. I actually sit on the city planning commission now, which is a big responsibility. But yeah, it's great to be here. I look forward to answering all of your questions.
Perfect. Thank you, Andrew. We're happy to have you join us today. Dana, will you introduce yourself now?
Sure. Nice to meet everyone, and similarly very excited to be here. My name is Dana Pesci. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I graduated from UC Riverside long ago in 1994, and was here between 1990 and 1994. Obtained my Bachelor of Science in Business Administration. Wasn't thinking real estate was my path, but ended up kind of falling into it. And over the last about 25 years have spent my career on the corporate real estate side, working for a lot of large tech and media entertainment companies, helping with managing their corporate real estate portfolios. And yeah, super excited to be here and look forward to the conversation.
Perfect. Thank you, Dana. And really excited to have you with us today. And last but not least.
Hi, so my name is Katia Miramontes, and I'm so excited to be here with all of you today. I went to UCR, I graduated in 2009, and I was part of Greek life there. And real estate was always something that I was interested in, but I never really thought that it was going to be my career of choice. And through one of the career fairs at Riverside, I was able to secure a job at Wells Fargo, and I became a lender there. So make sure you go to those career fairs because they do work. I got a job through there, and the more I learned about lending and about real estate lending, I really felt that becoming a real estate agent was more aligned with my who I am as a person. And I've been in real estate for about 7-8 years now, and I really love it. So I'm very excited to be here. I focus on residential sales throughout the Los Angeles area.
Perfect. And thank you all for those great introductions. And, I'm so excited to have you three with us because you represent such a diverse group of even just real estate. And so really excited to be able to hear your perspective. So again, remember that if you have any questions for our panelists, feel free to submit your questions in the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. We'll try and get to those throughout the program. But we have some prepared questions for our panelists to kind of kick off the conversation. So we'll dive into the first one, which is, and some of you kind of started to touch on it, but really what made you interested in a career in real estate? Does anyone want to take this one first?
I can, oh, you go ahead.
You go.
Like I said, it kind of found me. I would say I always was really interested in business, specifically finance, actually similar to Andrew, considered at one point even going into law, which are pretty important skill sets in the real estate side. I would say, legal, finance are skills that we use every day in our careers. So that was kind of a natural path that somebody was able to present me with an opportunity to work in a corporate real estate environment. But again, it wasn't something that I had thought about, but having those foundational skill sets really allowed me to pursue it as a career. Katya?
For me, I've always been interested in real estate, but I think what really, caught my interest was while I was in college, I started reading a lot of books about like self-help, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and, books on how to build wealth. And I realized that real estate was a major component. And who doesn't want to be wealthy? Who doesn't want to be financially stable? So I thought, what a great way for me to get into this field and, become financially stable myself, but also help other people, achieve that goal.
Yeah, and I think what I have to say is kind of building upon that too, is firstly, I'm really thankful that because I just totally fell into real estate. I never considered it, not once. But to where I'm at now, to see how important that is as an aspect of all of our lives. Every person needs a roof over their heads, whether they're renting or owning. So it's really important, even if the people listening have no interest in being in the industry. I think it's very important to at least educate yourself on in the real estate field and be familiar with the market, because it helps all of us. But for me, yeah, so I was playing soccer, and then I was studying to go to law school, and my sister was a realtor. So I saw a little bit about what she did. We ended up kind of getting involved in like a real estate investment, kind of one of those silly big meeting type things, but learned a ton of stuff. And during that process, I got my real estate license, and I didn't want to be a realtor, but I thought, flipping houses or doing some creative real estate stuff might be interesting. So I learned all of that. And then when I changed my mind about going to law school, I had a license. I was coaching soccer, and I was like, you know what, let's just try this realtor thing. And I'm just really thankful. It's lucky, really, but it's a great career.
All right, thank you all for sharing. And it's really cool to know that you all kind of fell into it in some capacity, and maybe didn't go into college thinking that's what you were going to do. So kind of going along with that, then were there experiences at UCR that maybe helped you prepare for your current role, whether you knew it's where you were going to or not? Katia, you talked about the career fairs, which are open to both students and alumni, if folks didn't know. But are there other things on campus that help prepare you for where you are now? Again, whether it was real estate specifically or just skills, et cetera, that you would suggest folks take advantage of? Yeah, Dana.
An experience for me at Riverside that was really important, I would say, in terms of kind of my life after Riverside, was the opportunity to experience internships and participate in internships through Professor Leverage. His department. I wasn't a political science major at Riverside. I was really business, but that was an area that was of interest to me. And he opened up the opportunity to participate in internships for really any student, and forever grateful to him for that opportunity. While I was there, I did an internship at the public defender's office, at the DA's office, at the, I don't know if it's still there, the local Riverside Police Department. And so having that exposure to industry and to government and to life outside of the university was so impactful. And I would say take advantage of those types of opportunities so you can kind of get a sense of what life is outside of college.
Yeah, and the Ron Leverage internship and fellow program still exists, and there's still students taking part of that. And for folks that don't know, Ron Leverage is a professor here on campus and was previously the Riverside mayor, and it's really a legacy here on campus. So really cool to hear that you took a part of that and other internships. Katia or Andrew, do you have other things that come to mind for you?
Yeah, I was a business major. So as a real estate agent, you're an independent contractor, meaning that you own your own business. So the classes that I took at Riverside were very helpful, as far as sales, marketing, accounting, operations. I felt that I probably had a little bit of a leg up that somebody else that did not take those classes. In addition, when you take your real estate license, you're required to take certain amount of classes, and some of the classes that I took at Riverside gave me credit for that. So that also was really awesome.
Well, let's really know that was able to contribute directly to your license itself.
Yeah.
Andrew?
Yeah, I mean, I think I didn't get as involved with groups and things going on campus while I was there, because all of my time, if it wasn't studying, was with the soccer team. But funnily enough, the philosophy degree was a huge help. I think I spent a lot of time reading and writing, and so I'm very comfortable with contracts even early on. Just reading the fine print and making sure that my clients are protected. I mean, of course, I would always run everything by my broker, I still do now actually, but in the early years especially, to make sure. But that helped a lot. And then I think, like Katya said, we run our own businesses, so I think just being able to manage the soccer schedule, weights and training and whatnot, with the class schedules, just time management in general, and being able to get done what you need to get done. Those are skills that that are valuable for whatever you end up doing in life. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you all for sharing, and it's great to hear that UCR left an impact in your lives in some capacity. Multiple of you have mentioned your real estate license and whatnot. So can you maybe share what the typical process is to become a real estate agent for folks that may not know kind of how you have to become licensed and what that looks like, and also, and this is something I don't even know, does it differ depending on where you live? Does that kind of change things? So I don't know who wants to take that one on first and talk through kind of that process to become a real estate agent. Katia, you look like you.
I'm like, who? Go, Andrew.
Okay, I'll jump in. So I know there's different ways. For me, we live in a virtual world. I just did online classes. It's there's 3 classes. I forget the exact, like real estate principles. There's 3 basic ones that you have to take. I did a course. It was like lumblau.com. It's like $100, $150. Take the classes, take the test, and then schedule the real estate license exam. It's very, very, very easy and cheap. And like I kind of said before, I think everyone should do it. I think everybody should get their real estate license just so that you have a little bit of a working knowledge, even if you don't get into the business. It's valuable life information, I think. So I would recommend it for everyone.
Katya, Dana, things to add to that about your experience going through the process?
Yeah, I mean, like Andrew said, it's not a difficult process. You have to take the classes, you have to study for the test, pass it, and in addition to that, you need to pass a background check. And really, after you have your license, it's just all about putting yourself out there and interviewing different brokerages so that you have somewhere to hang your license and start working.
Dana, does it look any different when you're not in residential? Has that process look different for you?
It is a little different. I mean, I have my residential salesperson license, and most people, I would say, on the corporate or commercial side would have either a salesperson license, and then there's a second test for a brokerage license, which requires a few more classes, I believe. I don't remember how many more it takes to get then your salesperson license, but most people, I would say, would start pursuing their salesperson license, and then if you wanted to continue on to get your own broker's license, you can do that. If you're active, you have to hang your salesperson license with a licensed broker. So there's a lot of kind of legalities, which, to Andrew's point, it's beneficial just understanding, like going through the process to just educate yourself, whether you're buying your own home or at some point, involved in real estate. It's just good life knowledge to have. On the corporate real estate side, like when you work for a company, you technically don't have to have your real estate license. I would say in most companies, people are relying on third-party brokers to help them actually transact, buying and leasing space. Sometimes you can do it direct, but I would say generally as an industry, most people have their license, either salesperson or brokerage license.
And I'm not familiar with other states, unfortunately. I've only ever worked in California, so I can't speak to that.
Same.
I think you're all in Southern California, so that may have not been a question that maybe any of you can answer, but
I think each state has their own licensing requirements.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you. That's really helpful, and hopefully helps folks get a better idea of kind of what that next step is if they're interested in it. I think a good question maybe to dive into next, being able to talk about, obviously we've got Katya and Andrew in residential and Dana and commercial. Can you share maybe a bit more about maybe what the difference is between the various types of real estate? And I know there's more beyond just those two, and kind of what how do you kind of decide which route you want to go and whatnot. And so I don't know if anyone wants to dive in. Maybe Dana, you can start a bit more talking about more the commercial side, which maybe in my mind folks don't always think of as when they first think of real estate. So maybe share a bit more about maybe some of the differences between the different types of kind of, and if there's certain things you have to do to break into one versus the other. Dana, do you want to maybe take that one first?
Yeah, sure. So I would say, opposite of residential, you have commercial, which could mean like retail space. It could mean office space. It could mean industrial, like warehouse, logistics type space. It could mean studio space, as an example. It could mean data centers. It could mean basically anything that's not housing. And there's all kinds of housing, which Katya and Andrew can speak to as well, single family homes, multifamily homes. But I would say on the commercial side, there's a whole kind of range or spectrum of opportunities within real estate, not just transactional, meaning buying or selling or leasing space, but designing space. I would say most large companies have dedicated teams that focus on various verticals within the real estate industry, designing construction, leasing, occupancy planning. So looking at, the company's headcount and how the company's going to grow and how they're going to house people, even to on the design side, sustainability and focusing on how do we make our, real estate footprints more carbon neutral and sustainable in the future. Obviously, you have the design side and architectural side. So there's all kinds of facets within commercial real estate or corporate, meaning within a particular company, that you can explore beyond just kind of the typical transactional elements of real estate. But that is kind of the primary difference, I would say, between commercial and residential.
Cool. And then Katya and Andrew, I know, Andrew, you're obviously, focusing on historic homes, maybe a little different than what Katya is doing with what she's doing. So do either of you, further thoughts on that and kind of your specific paths of your specific area of real estate?
Yeah, I think, Dana made a really great point. Even within residential and commercial, there's so many different things that you can specialize on. So, Andrew specialized in historic homes. Other real estate agents that are more on the residential side might want to focus on condos, on new construction, on a client type, meaning working with just investors or working with first-time home buyers or, working with just sellers. There's just so many different facets that you can really focus on. And, my recommendation for somebody that is not sure about what they want to do, if they want to be in residential or commercial, is to, one, of course, go online. There's lots of information there, but then also to reach out to people that are in those fields and, take them out for coffee or even, a Zoom meeting, whatever, and ask them questions, because what you see online or what you see on social media as to what it means to be a real estate agent, it's very different to what it actually is. So, speaking with professionals, people that are in the field, it's going to be very helpful.
Yeah, for sure. And I would just add, I think based on an individual's location, kind of look around. Like my kind of broad strokes understanding of the commercial side, because I just don't do commercial. I like to stay in my own lane. And I get calls for commercial fairly often. And I have another guy in town, another UCR grad as well, that I send all that business to. And then he just pays me a referral fee. But yeah, I mean, commercial side is very numbers heavy. In my limited understanding, I think on the residential side, it's very relationship heavy. And so I do have another friend that's also a UCR grad that I played soccer with. He sells industrial buildings in Ontario. He does very well, and it's all numbers. It's like how much per square foot, plain and simple. And that just doesn't fit really with my personality as much, but if someone's more into that, that's a great career as well. But like Dana said, I even learned some stuff from her right now. I had no idea, but yeah, commercial, land sales, industrial buildings, there's so many facets. So I think I would just look around where you're at, what your city has, what you're interested in, and then just start meeting people and kind of go from there.
Thank you all. That was very helpful to really start to understand the differences. And even, like Katya said, even within residential sales, there's so many different, areas. And so hopefully that helps folks, get a better understanding of what all there is out there. There's a lot of different opportunities. We got our first question from the audience, so we're going to go ahead and answer that. So kind of looking back to that real estate license and exam from Roselia, who is a student and is highly interested in real estate. They've completed the courses needed to take the exam, but have not taken the exam yet. Are there study habits that you recommend or any resources to help with studying for the exam that any of you recommend?
Yes, and honestly, just study the answer and the questions. by the test and memorize every single one of them. When you actually go and take the test, that's going to be very similar. That's what I did, and I passed the first time.
Yeah, the test is actually fairly different than the classes, if I remember. It's been a while now, but I think when I took the test, the broker that my sister was working under had a CD of the test questions, and I just memorized them all. It's pretty simple. The questions are there. They're very similar to the actual test. So I would imagine now online, you can go online and buy. I don't know. I'm not sure what it would cost, but certainly not more than about $100, I would think. So yeah, that's the way to go.
Yeah.
And I just recently renewed my license in a few months ago and went through the process. I would agree. Definitely, just study the questions. There's plenty of practice tests out there. There's also a ton of kind of weekend crash courses, 2-day test prep courses that you could take that will probably get you everything you need to be prepared for the test. So I would recommend that if you have the time over a weekend. Yeah, but it's if you study the material and really, as Katya said, really memorize the answer, that's probably the easiest way to pass that test. And it's all online. At least when I took it I had to go to Sacramento. I think it was in August or September this year. It's a computer based, so you go in and it's multiple choice. I think it's like 100 questions or something like that. And then there's continuing education also. So every couple of years, you have to keep your license active by taking continuing educational classes.
Perfect. Thank you all for sharing. And I'll tap into our panelists too. And if they have any resources they want to share, then we'll make sure to include it in a follow-up email to all of our participants here today. So looking at obviously, the housing market, and this may be more for Katya and Andrew, but how does your role change as the housing market fluctuates, when it's booming, when there's a downturn, how does that change the work that you're doing?
Who wants to go first?
I'll jump in. So I've been in real estate for 8 years now. So I'm just beginning to see my first shift, so since I began, the market's done nothing but go up. And the good thing though, is that I have a lot of agents in my office, like just this week, actually, no, last Friday, my broker celebrated 40 years in the business in this same office. She started when she was 17 years old. So she's seen a lot of ups and downs. There was a gentleman that I had in my office that's 82. He's been in real estate since he was 22. He's seen tons of ups and downs. So I always reach out, and it's the same thing that I learned playing soccer, like find the best player you can and learn from them. When I got into this business, I found all the top agents and I just shadowed them and asked them questions. And so that's helpful. So I'm just approaching what I think might be a little bit of a market change, and we'll see. But what I've already noticed so far is that the conversations just start to change. Instead of, people are looking at, my first question for most people is what's the time period you're looking at? Are you 2 years? Are you 5 years? Is this going to be a 20-year home? And so depending on the market dynamics, whether we look like we're going to be growing in equity or losing equity, or changes in lending practices, which could change prices, you look at that, and then we look at the individual's situation and see what the best option is. And that's something that I've learned to love about this business, is it's different for every single person. Every house and every person is different, so you're not just droning over the same thing week after week, which I like. If you're like habits and one thing at a time, you probably are not going to love real estate. But yeah, just managing the conversations and trying to match the current market conditions as best as we can see them with the individuals, with their situation.
Yeah, I mean, I think Andrew just pretty much, hit it in the nail. my job as a real estate agent is to protect my clients' interests at all times. And that is regardless whether we're in an up market or a down market, that is taken into consideration. But what also is taken into consideration is, the client's needs. What are their short-term, are their long-term goals? And, as real estate agents, we wear very different hats, and those hats really differ depending on the client's needs. So sometimes our clients really need us to be like really tough negotiators. Sometimes they are going through hardship and they need us to be a counselor for them. Sometimes they need an interior decorator and they want us just to come in and reorganize their house so they can get the best, price for their property. So it's not just, the market changing, it's also what are the client needs.
No, I actually would like to add, when I first got in, I think Katya and I, sounds like came in at about the same time. We were just coming out of the recession.
Yeah.
And my very first listing that I took was a listing that another agent gave me because they didn't want it. And so as a brand new agent with my first listing, I had to talk to this owner about how much money he was willing to pay to sell his house. And that was not a fun or easy conversation. And it was very, very common for people. They were short selling, which means they're selling their house for less than they owe on their mortgage. Foreclosures were still frequent, and people that were right on the edge were paying money to close to get out from underneath the property. And so in this upcycle, as I'm seeing rates hitting the floor and prices going through the sky, I'm always keeping in the back of my mind that I don't want to help anybody get into a house and have to call them in 2 or 3 or 4 years because they're losing that house because they can't afford it. So I'm very careful with making sure that whatever my clients that are actually buying right now in this high market are buying something that makes sense, so that they're happy that I help them and they're not mad at me in a few years. So yeah, I saw a little bit of a change early on and just kind of juggling those things moving forward.
Yeah, there's a really great point, especially, coming out of that recession and looking at where we're at now, where who knows what's to come. Dana, do you have, things like, I don't personally know what that's like on the, commercial side, but do you have, thoughts on maybe what that looks like on your end of things?
Yeah, I mean, it's similar in the fact that, the greater economy, interest rates, all of that has a direct correlation on real estate pricing and availability and supply, and whether people are buying or not buying. The same is true on the commercial side, even more so, I would say, because to Andrew's earlier point, it's very financially driven. So any changes in interest rates will have an impact on how the market is, how active the market is, and what changes people take. From a corporate perspective, from a company perspective, typically real estate costs are one of the top 3 in terms of a company's overall costs. Generally, people costs, like the cost to pay people's salaries, are typically number 1, followed by real estate costs. So it's very important in terms of the financial health of a company to have the right balance of real estate so that they don't have excessive costs.
Well, thank you all for sharing. I think those were all really great insights into what that looks like at a time when we don't know what's next. So we got another question from our audience. So this is from, and apologize if I mispronounce your name, but Corrine. And they ask, how important or relevant do you feel it would be to get a real estate license as a residential, multi-unit, and or small commercial developer, being the builder and selling agent? Anyone have initial thoughts on that question?
It's important that you get it. In my opinion, if you should focus on one, you should know about both, but should really focus on one. If you want to be a developer, that really should be your focus. How to find the best deals, or embarking the help of other real estate professionals to help you find those deals so that you can focus on making the best design for that property, or managing your construction crew and construction costs, and have them take care of the sales process. It's important that you get your license and that you know about the process, But my thing, it's really focus, like stay in your lane, focus on what you want to do. You want to be a flipper? Okay, let that be your thing. If you want to be a real estate agent, let that be your thing too.
Any additional thoughts on that question?
I would say it's important, just to the earlier conversation, it's just more education for you. If you're on the commercial side, you still you take the same test. So there's one test, regardless of whether you go into residential or commercial. And I would say, the majority of that test really relates more to residential. It really doesn't really speak to the commercial side, although you still have to get the same license. So I think in any capacity, if you're thinking about getting into the industry, having that as just a foundational knowledge is important.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that once you get into whatever facet of the business it is, or the industry, I should say, it's very different than what you take on the test. But if you're going to get into any of it, I would just get the license, get the education. It's not going to hurt.
Thank you all. Just a reminder, folks, if you do have questions, send them in the Q&A in the bottom, and we'll try and get to them. So our next question, obviously we're meeting here virtually, and life has changed a lot in the last 2 years at this point. And so how has the pandemic impacted the work that you do? Especially at that early stage where you probably couldn't do open houses, or maybe office space isn't as needed as it was in the past. And so how has that kind of impacted the work that you're doing, maybe at the onset, and even now, has it changed culture permanently, you think? So yeah, I'll kind of open that up to whoever maybe has an answer right away.
I think more than
Yeah. Go ahead.
Katya, you go.
I think more than anything, it really challenged our creativity. We had to find new ways to communicate with our clients, new ways to serve them because their needs changed. We had to find new ways of how to market property because, as you mentioned, we couldn't really do open houses. So, I think if anything, that, thank God for Zoom, thank God for FaceTime. That really allowed client communication, to be better since we couldn't meet in person. But also, as far as the marketing side, you really realize how important it is to have professional photography, to have a floor plan, to have videos of the property, because now when you go on Zillow, the pretty pictures are the ones that are gonna attract you. Those are the homes you're gonna want to go see, that ones are you gonna inquire about. So I think it helped. Maybe before, other agents were using their phone to take photos, and they that like their listing picture, which it's like a pet peeve of mine. And thank God for the pandemic. I think it motivated them to hire a professional photographer and do the right type of marketing, do the right thing for the clients, so that their house does sell for top dollar.
Yeah, that's a big question because, I think all of us, I'm sure students included, my gosh, I can't even imagine trying to go to college online. I'm an in-person kind of person. It's not easy. So it's really just put us all on our toes and just kind of figuring out how to make it work. I think when the pandemic hit and the governor was wanting to shut down everything back in March 2020, I think I had 5 houses in escrow, and one of them was like a 5-leg transaction. So they were selling and moving out of state. That person was moving out of state. Like there was 4 people moving out of state. So there were transactions across the country from California to New York. And just without technology, I don't think it would have happened. There's no way. But yeah, just learning how to operate in a non-contact world, which again, with technology has made it fairly easy. I will say I love not doing open houses. I'm never doing another open house in my life. But yeah, just heavily leveraging technology and making it work. Again, it's a relationship business, so just being on the phone a lot more, being on FaceTime a lot more. I never liked FaceTime. I never liked to use it before. Now I use it all the time, and I've come to get used to it. Yeah, to keep it simple, I would just say, just like everyone's dealing with the same world, we're just running the business in that framework.
Yeah, I think it also, just to add to that, I think buyer demand, really changed. Whereas now, people that were living in condos thought, saw the importance of having a yard. And, we saw a lot of shifts of people, wanting to move to bigger spaces, or, making sure that the property that they live in has a backyard. Because people were now working from home, they don't need to be close to work. So then they're able to move, a little bit further away. So I also feel that, areas that were more in the outskirts of the city definitely saw, the demand just became higher, and in turn, it really increased prices. When the pandemic started, I feel, personally, we were freaking out, what is going to happen? What is this going to do to the real estate market? Are prices all of a sudden going to go down? But fortunately, that was not the case. And if anything, it just created this buyer frenzy. And, now as you can see, a lot of people have tons of appreciation, due to the increased higher demand that the pandemic has brought.
Yeah. And I think for me particularly, there wasn't a massive change. The biggest change was large groups of people. So, I was selling houses this whole time. It did not slow down, not one bit. So we just would switch things up. Like before, where I would just, it wasn't even an open house. I just had so many showing requests. I would just go to the house, open it all up, and let people come through. Then it changed. Everyone had to be masked up and sanitizer and not touch surfaces and not open doors, touch windows, and come in only 2 at a time or 3 at a time. And so just a little bit of procedural changes. But yeah, the market got hotter, and we just whatever we could do, we would do, and what we couldn't do, we didn't do. And I'm thankful to not have been in an industry that got impacted, because I know not everybody can say that.
Yeah.
Dana, how about on the corporate side? How has the pandemic impacted the work that you're doing?
Yeah, I would say on the corporate side, it's really made companies relook at or kind of put their thoughts together on what is the future of work? What does that mean? What does that look like? And I think it varies by company, depending on the culture and the industry. There was fears that, nobody would be going back to the office ever. So do people need, all this office space? Can companies reduce how much office space that they lease or own? So that is something that's ongoing still at the company I'm at today. And I would say most companies are relooking at what is the right balance, because I think the way that people will work in the future is going to look different than it was pre-COVID. It seems to me like it's going to be a hybrid where, there is work that you can do that doesn't require you to be in the office. As an example, if there's a company meeting, that has a large number of attendees that doesn't make sense to have in person, those types of meetings can be done probably from home or over VC, whereas maybe more in smaller collaborative meetings really require people to be in the office. So it seems like most companies are kind of landing at a hybrid approach, where instead of being in the office 5 days a week, you would be in the office maybe 3 days a week and work from home 2 days a week. And so translating what that means into how much real estate does the company need then, if we're moving towards kind of a hybrid approach, is an interesting problem to kind of look at and figure out what's the solution. So future of work is really important, and that ties into a company's HR policies as well as technology. Being able to support that kind of hybrid model is important. The other aspect I would say that came up through the pandemic is just the company's position on social distancing and vaccination requirements. That is always a touchy subject across the board. So what a company wants to implement in terms of, from a governance or policy perspective. Is it a condition of employment? Is it, are we going to set up the office in a way where desks are 6 feet apart? Are we going to implement, restrictions on occupancy in terms of how many people can occupy a particular office? So all of that is kind of new conversations that are happening in the corporate world that will impact how much space companies will occupy going forward.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I think, nope, go
I'll
on,
just
Andrew.
add one quick thing. I mean, I think the cat's out of the bag and it's not going back in. I mean, I think that, like, my wife's a marriage and family therapist for Kaiser, and she's been working from home now full time. She does not want to go back into the office, and there's no reason that she should, because she's able to do all of her work as she did before. I will say she was a virtual counselor as well, even before the pandemic. But I think that the mixture between the world changing and people getting used to these new abilities and seeing that it can work, and then that mixed with the next generation that is hooked on technology even worse than probably I am. I think that it's just going to be that way moving forward. Definitely hybrid, but certainly technology heavy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, yeah, that return to work, we're hybrid here at UC Riverside, even the majority of departments. And, that definitely comes into, we have office space that we don't need. Like, what does that look like on that real estate side? So I definitely think you make some great points. And, thank you all for sharing. Our next question, really looking at, just for folks wanting to get into, real estate, wondering, like, what that looks like, what their jobs would look like. Can you maybe share a bit about what your day-to-day looks like? I know, Andrew mentioned it doesn't always look the same, but, like, in a typical, day, what does that look like? Maybe Andrew, do you want to share first?
Sure. Yeah, I think for me, it's changed even from early on in my career to now. I think I worked a lot more hours in the earlier years, and in the last year, I mean, not just, also with changes in the pandemic, I think a big part of me was quality of life. And so I took a big step back from so many hours at work, and now I get up a little later, I work out in the middle of the day, I make my schedule around what I want to do. And certainly I make less money than I used to, but it's enough that I'm happy. So I would say, like, an average day for me is up probably somewhere between 7 and 8, coffee and breakfast. I like to have coffee and breakfast. I don't skip that and go straight to work. And then I'll either, if I have appointments, I'll head to those first. If not, I'll go into my office. I'll work on some marketing stuff, make some phone calls, kind of just hang out. I like coming into the office too, because I connect with a lot of other agents, and we do deals just here in our office, just because I'm having a chat with a friend and, oh, he's got a listing coming up and I've got a buyer, and it all works out like that. Then typically I'm bouncing around home inspections, appraisals, or getting ready for those. And then my evenings are usually pretty busy because that's when people get off work. So now I'm showing houses or listing appointments. Like, I've got a listing appointment tomorrow night. I've got one Saturday morning. I've got an appraisal on Friday. So appointments like that. But I feel like I'm doing a much better job now in this last 2 years of, if I've got a block in the middle of the day, a couple hours, instead of cramming in some more work, I'll go run up Mount Rubidoux and work out, or do something for me. And I think it's cool that you have the flexibility in this business, but you have to be careful, because some people think, oh, I'm going to go into real estate because I can do whatever I want, whenever I want. But you can very, very quickly end up working all day, every day, 7 days a week. And for some people, that's fine. For me, that's not what I like to do. But
Thanks, Andrew. Dana, let's go to you next and hear what a day at Netflix looks like.
Yeah, sure. I would say a lot of meetings, we're still pretty much virtual. The offices are open. So today I'm in an office as an example, but I would say there's just a lot of meetings. Some of the meetings are more focused on project status, where we're talking about how we're tracking on certain projects. Others tend to be like more brainstorming conversations around the example, like future of work and what that looks like. But similar to Andrew, just, you have to set boundaries for yourself. If you wanted to work 24/7, you could easily do that. But you have to really create that work-life balance for yourself, which is challenging, I think, in any industry today, especially when it's virtual, because as soon as you open your laptop, at home, you're working. And so there's really not that fine line between being in your workspace versus being at home. It all blends together. So I think that's been challenging for myself and a lot of other people at Netflix that have been working remotely during the pandemic, is that, it could be all day, all night, especially most corporate real estate organizations tend to be global. So managing different time zones is also challenging. So you really have to set those boundaries. And if you're spending a portion of your day focusing on, Asia as an example, then you probably might want to start later in the day so that you can get time in for self-care.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you so much. Then last, Katya, what does your day-to-day look like?
I think Andrew actually gave a really accurate picture as to what a day-to-day looks like. And your activities are going to also change whether you're just starting or whether you're more of a seasoned agent. So at its core, real estate, it's a sales job. And when you're starting, if you don't have connections, really a lot of your time, it's going to be spent reaching out to potential clients and just lead generation, right? And the way that you generate clients, it's going to be up to you, but you can do it either by doing open houses, by calling, by door knocking, by reaching out to your database, to your peers. And I think that this is a major component as to that is going to dictate whether you're going to be successful or not. And it's something that is not really talked about because it's not sexy, right? Being on your phone, calling strangers, asking if they want to sell their home, and then, telling you off, it's not sexy. It's very hard to do. Knocking on people's doors, going to open houses, doing all that stuff. Again, it's just not something that is talked about. And I think it's very important that people know about it. We go on social media, we watch Selling Sunset, and we think that selling real estate is about, showing up, looking pretty, let me smile, here's the contract, done, I made a big commission. It doesn't work that way, guys. There's a lot of work that goes behind it, and you have to be prepared for that. So as you become more seasoned, yes, you can take a few, some time off, and you can work out in the middle of the day. Andrew has paid his dues to be able to do that. But when you're starting, you really have to be focused and develop really thick skin because, you're really, out there.
I'm currently watching Selling Sunsets. When I came into this, that's what was in my mind this whole time.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really fun show to watch. I think the only real thing about that is when they were interviewing a seller and she was like, well, I think my house is worth more because I decorated myself and I put, this type of slab. And that's very real. Sellers always want more for their house, but you coming in the office and gossiping and doing all that, fun drama. Yeah, it could happen, but it's not going to make you any money.
That's great to, be able to talk to you all and understand folks that may not have a, a realistic idea outside of HGTV and that show. So it's been so great to chat with you all today. We're coming up on time. And so before we end our session today, I'd like to just ask each panelist for, a few final words of advice. So I don't know, maybe who has their imparting knowledge to folks ready first, but, just kind of the last thing you want to leave with our participants today.
For me,
No, go ahead.
For me, it's to really do your research. Find out if you want to do residential or commercial, and pick a few specialties that you think might interest you. And again, just go out and reach out to the people that are doing it so that you can get a real picture of what it's going to take for you to be successful in that field. To me, that's really, the number one thing. A lot of people believe that real estate is going to be an easy career and that it's, that it's going to be fun. And it is, and it's an amazing, and you can make a lot of money, but it's not for everyone. So again, do your research and make sure that this is something that you really want to do.
Andrew?
Yeah, I think for me, when you become an agent, if you become an agent on either side, you run your own business. So when I first walked into the doors at Coldwell Banker, and this is the only office I've ever worked for, it doesn't cost the broker much to talk to you. They don't hire you and pay you money. So if wherever you are, wherever you live, go meet with a few brokers. If you're interested in more of the numbers commercial side or the residential side, just go meet with them, talk with them. They'll give you great advice. I'm happy to help. I'm sure all of us would be happy to help if you're somewhat close. I live in Riverside. So yeah, I think that's a great way to start. And then you'll start to really get a sense of what that business looks like and personalities. When I started in real estate, I was renting a house from a realtor, and she gave me her top 3 offices in Riverside to go interview with. And that's what I did. And then the one that I'm at, I've been here ever since because I like it a lot. So I would say that's my best advice in terms of getting into the business. And then I think it's important to specialize. I've decided to specialize in historic houses. I think there's a lot of realtors out there. So it's important to have something that you're really passionate about that will set you apart. And it's the best advice I can give.
Dana.
I would say similar to Katya's point, just kind of, figuring out what speaks to you, what's important, what you could be passionate about, because no matter which direction you go in, it's hard work. And especially on the front end of your career, not to say that on the back end it gets any easier, but it's a lot of hard work and a lot of hours. And I think if you can find a facet of real estate that speaks to what's important to you, you'll probably get more joy out of it in the long run. So whether it's solving our affordable housing crisis, or looking at urban planning, or figuring out how do we build buildings that are more sustainable for the environment, or bringing joy to that first time home buyer in finding a home that is going to really allow them to start a family. I mean, there's so many facets to real estate. So I would say to be introspective and figure out what's important to you, what would you get joy out of? And then there is some form of real estate industry that will speak to that, because it's so broad. So, try to align your personal passion with your career objectives, I guess.
Oh, that is all great advice, and really, I'm happy to have been able to send it out. This hour flew by. If for some reason we weren't able to get to your questions, we do have a few questions that we unfortunately weren't able to get to. We'll hopefully be able to share LinkedIn information or contact information for our panelists for you to connect with and ask them any additional questions that you may have. But on behalf of UC Riverside, thank you everyone for joining us today for our Industry Insights event. It was a pleasure to connect virtually with each of you today. Really appreciate you making the time to be a part of today's event, and hope that all of our participants gained some valuable advice. I would like to especially thank Andrew, Dana, and Katya for their time, generosity, and commitment to UCR and the Alumni Association. The insights and advice that you've shared today really make me especially proud to be a part of the UCR community, because y'all are doing some really great things. And so really enjoyed our time today. Again, all of our participants will receive a follow-up email containing a recording of this webinar and any resources our panelists would like to share. Please visit alumni.ucr.edu/career-services for further details on other upcoming episodes or to view recordings of our past webinars. We really encourage you to also sign up for our UCR Career Network, which is a new free online networking and mentorship platform that we launched last year. You can join that at careernetwork.ucr.edu. And again, that'll be in the follow-up email, but as another great way to network and connect with Highlanders just like this. But that being said, thank you all so much again, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Go Highlanders.
Hey, guys.
Go Highlanders.